Welcome to the Hazard Class Podcast. This is the podcast where I get to ask my stupid questions to some of the smartest people in and around the world of emergency services. My guest this week needs no introduction. He is one of the most revered and respected voices in all of the fire service. He's retired as a lieutenant after serving 39 years with the FDNY. He is the head author of the FDNY's Engine Company Operations Manual. His list of accreditations and citations is longer than I could ever read. His 2009 FDIC keynote speech titled "A Culture of Extinguishment" is one of the foundational moments in my life personally and has been used across the country and the world to inspire the next generation of firemen. His name is Ray, and he likes going to fires. My guest this week, retired FDNY Lieutenant Ray McCormack. Ray, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. It's an honor.
Great introduction. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's the least I could do. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of the interview today, this show has a little bit of a thing we do every week, which is our wheel of stupid questions. And I'm going to spin a wheel. We're going to see what we get this week. And that's just a reminder that asking questions is good. Even if they're stupid, if you point them at the right people, you can get some pretty smart answers. So with that, we'll bounce into that segment and then we will see what we get this week. All right, here's the wheel. I'm spinning it. We're going to see what we get. Okay. Lieutenant Ray McCormack, do you believe in ghosts?
Ghosts? I don't think so, no.
No. You've never had an experience where you think ghosts might be a thing?
Oh, I didn't say that.
Okay. Okay. You're going to take team no ghost. I'll take it. Okay, so we'll get into the real thing here. Let's start from the very jump. Why the fire service in the first place?
I'll be honest with you, default. I worked at CBS Television for about 16 months. I wanted to be in television production. I'm not sure exactly where. But I wasn't getting anywhere there. So, as they say, my number came up and my father had been on the job. So he had encouraged me to at least try it. And I did. But, it's funny in New York, there are so many people that apply. You're given a list number. And I had to wait probably almost 3 years to get on after the list was promulgated. But if I had been called earlier, I probably would have turned it down because I was still in college and wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I didn't automatically want to follow in my father's footsteps, to be honest with you. When you're that age, you're young, you got a bit of rebellion, you want to do something on your own kind of. But I guess that after having a taste of that industry, and it's funny because it boomed around then. Cable TV was just starting, basically. CNN had just started. There were opportunities, but I guess I just didn't really feel like suffering through all that. And I knew it was a great job, and he had a lot of friends that were great people, and he was right. I would love it, and I did.
Where did your dad work?
He worked in Brooklyn and Queens, and he was in a bad apparatus accident, and he had to retire early. And so, we didn't have the greatest history in my family. And I mentioned this in the speech, my mother's brother was killed on the job. He was a captain in Queens at a collapse, and himself and 5 other firemen were killed. So, while the fire department was encouraged, we also knew the danger of it firsthand.
Mm-hmm. What do you remember about your dad's job as a kid? Do you remember going to the firehouse? Anything you remember specifically?
I do remember going to the firehouse. I didn't go there often. I think the smell of the rubber coats, because it was those days rubber coats were used, just a lot of that smell. I remember they had a backyard in this firehouse. And, I do remember going upstairs and seeing the bunks. And it's funny you mentioned that, because years later I was teaching forcible entry. We had a truck that went around, and I did that. So two interesting things happened on that trip. I went upstairs to fax something to headquarters, and I noticed a photograph, and it's a 294 engine, the engine that was in the house with my dad was in 143 truck at the end. And so anyway, there's a picture of them with a 2.5, and it was the cover of Urban Firefighter magazine, the first cover. And I never knew what company it was, because you couldn't tell from the back. And that's what made the picture iconic, really, because it could have been anybody. And so I finally put those pieces together, and I got a good view of the firehouse because I was there for a little bit. And, it just brought back a lot of memories. So, but no, I wasn't one of those kids that went to the firehouse a lot. No.
Okay. Do you remember your first fire? This is one I always try to get in people. Like, you were on the job. You remember the first one?
I do.
What do you remember about it?
Getting separated from the captain and the irons guy, and trying to find them. Yeah, when you're a new firefighter, we had a fire in a tenement, and it was up a couple of floors. I think we were actually above the fire. I think we were second due. And so it's smoky automatically. And, that sudden loss of visibility and people screaming and, windows breaking. It's the whole thing. It's the whole package at one time. And, it was a matter of, they went in there and they even kind of lost touch with each other. They were tripping over some mattresses that were on the floor and stuff. So it worked out fine. But yeah, that was my first experience. Kind of vague, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's all a blur early on, right? Is it how it goes?
It is. Yeah.
So as you kind of push through your career, do you remember a turning point where you were like, this is going to be my thing? I'm absolutely in love with this career. Do you have is there a moment that happened that kind of made that, or is it kind of a little bit at a time?
It's a little bit at a time, but I will mention one thing that happened. My buddy had been detailed to another ladder company, came back and said, man, you got to see their compartments. The stuff was really organized. And I looked at ours, and ours weren't. And back in those days, there weren't, if you had a shelf, that was about it. So I asked the captain if I could reorganize the force. Well, I wouldn't even call it the forcible entry compartment, but this long tool compartment we had. And he said, okay. So I built a shelf in there. Now, this is not dramatic. I built a shelf that ran all the way across and put in some dividers and stuff, but it went from single to 4 independent spaces. And what it did was it showed me that you can do more than just come to work, and you can make a difference in how things go in the company at the firefighter level. And it just increased my interest in possibilities, what else could be done. So that led to writing, I would say. So yeah.
Do you remember the first thing you wrote about, and what inspired that?
Just what I told you.
Yeah.
First thing I wrote about was called Forcible Entry Tool Storage and Maintenance. It was in the first issue of '94, and it was the first ever truck company column for the magazine. Bill Manning, who was the editor, I brought it to him. And well, first Vincent Dunn, the famous deputy chief, was in my firehouse. So I had shown him the piece, and he said, oh, you got an article right here. You should do something with this. So I did, took some pictures, and then I wrote another one for them. And that's kind of how my writing started. I always liked writing anyway, but that's how it started for the fire service. So I had about 13 years before I ever did, pulled the trigger on anything. Some people start earlier, but that was what I did.
Were you teaching prior to starting to write, or did you go the other way for you?
No, I didn't teach till, I was going to say FDIC, but I might have taught prior to that. My first time I ever taught at a big show, I did Firehouse. I substituted for Tim, and I did the class there, and it was slides. They weren't even mine. They were his. And that went okay. That went real well. And then the first time I really taught, I guess, was at FDIC. I had 20 years at least.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's wild that someone as prolific in teaching as you would have waited 20 years into their career, which is an entire career for most people, to start teaching.
Yeah. Well, that's the way it went. I didn't, in fact, I said to my wife once, I said, I don't understand it. I write for the magazine, but they don't invite me to this FDIC thing. I had like no idea what it was, you know? And I'm like, this is weird. They don't invite their authors to this thing. But I actually did go, thanks to Timmy. And, you know, after that, I stayed. I enjoyed it. And, you know, I moved on. I'm on their advisory board for the magazine and FDIC show. So, you know, it just takes time. It's no big deal. But I think you have to have a certain level of confidence as well. Possibly I didn't get mine till I had more time, because the FDNY does value time, not officially, but the firefighters do. And, you know, you have to have some experience before you can go out and start telling other people about stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had to live in that world. So, you know, you have to have the respect of your peers. It'd be very, you would be looked down upon if you started to, you know, profess about things that you have very little experience in. So that's kind of what held me to the good course that I took.
So you talk about kind of waiting for that call to get invited to speak. What was that like? What was the process like when they asked you to do the keynote at FDIC? Like, what is that experience even like?
Nerve-wracking. In my book that I wrote, I have a chapter on the speech. I'm not going to give away how it came about, but I can just tell you that they told me to be there at like 6:30. So I'm walking the streets of Indianapolis, and there is literally no one out. And I get there, and I haven't eaten or anything, and I don't go on till about 9:30. So they had some food in there, but, you know, the point is, you just sit there and wait, and the anxiety just builds. And one of the speakers they had there was talking about fire-based EMS. And, you know, that kind of went over like a fart in church. And, you know, one of the things was a buddy of mine texted me, and he's like, when are you coming out?
So I'll tell you a bit. I usually on the podcast, I don't talk that much about myself. I try to just talk about the guests, but this one's such an important thing to me that I feel the need to tell you the portion, right? So, you know, I turned 33 this month. I'm a child of, you know, the 9/11 generation. Like that was the quintessential moment of my childhood. And so at that point, it was kind of where I made the turn of it. Wow, this firefighting thing looks like there's something to it. You know, my mom's ex-husband was a chief in the department I work for now. And so I grew up around the fire service, but I didn't really know. And 9/11 happened. I go, whoa, you know, this is pretty amazing what these guys are doing. And so cut to a decade later, I'm in fire school. I'm at the local VOTEC college, and my first semester, and they start talking about safety profiling and this and this and this. And I remember coming home to my now wife and being like, I don't know if this firefighting stuff's for me. Like I felt like I was, you know, fed a bag of goods. Like they said, my vision of what a firefighter was what I saw, you know, on 9/11. And now when I see behind the curtain, all they do is care about themselves, and they don't actually care about the people that they're rescuing, all these things. And somehow through that process, I found your speech. So this would have been in 2012. And I tell you, without your speech, I would not be a fireman now. So, because I was ready to give up because I thought that I'd been lied to about who firemen were. And if it wasn't for you showing me that I was just in the wrong group of people, it wasn't the wrong career field. I wouldn't have done this for the last, decade plus. So I'm really appreciative to you for saying the things that need to be said that day, because I think that I'm not the only one with that story. That
you're not.
And so with that, I kind of want to get into that speech, right? Mm-hmm. So as you prepared for this keynote, what topics were you thinking about talking about? Did you know that this was going to be the thing? Did you know that you were going to call out safety culture, or what else kind of ran through your brain about what to talk about?
Well, I would have to say a little bit of that. Yes, there were things going on in the fire service back then. Line of duty deaths were big talking points in the fire service. The amount, the 100, let's say. Mm-hmm. And that number was used as a cudgel on the fire service to tamp down interior attack, tamp down search, tamp down a lot of things that we might consider really standard. It was really a shift of the pendulum to don't worry so much about them, worry more about yourself. And I could see the handwriting on the wall, as a lot of people could. But the voices that were carrying that message were very strong and very connected. So to go against that would mean that you were going against people with influence, people with powerful connections. And this is not like some conspiracy thing, right? But it is true. Mm-hmm. One of the problems was the number. The number was 100, which is obviously a sad number. But the problem was people were not dying from fire activity. They were dying from medical things. Mm-hmm. And, it's still painful for the family, and they deserve everything they get. That's not the issue. The issue was that we were saying that firefighting was killing guys and gals, and it wasn't. Not at those numbers, at least. Mm-hmm. So it was more about medical emergencies that were affecting these firefighters. And granted, some of them were at fires. Yes, that's true. But they weren't necessarily doing or performing the hard physical tasks at the time. Anyway, like getting into the minutia of this is not necessary, but Bill Carey got in on it, and he talked about data, not drama, because the listing agencies were not really defining exactly what had happened so much. It was very broad. And using that broad brush, they were able to, what I felt was over safety the fire service, to the point that, as you've seen since, even people getting in trouble, people getting fired for doing their job. Now, no one, like I said in the speech, no one is asking you to go on some suicide mission. Nobody's saying that at all. You have to be smart about what you're doing, but you also have to be dependable. We've seen some serious flagrant violations of the public trust, with firefighters refusing to go in, people on the phone saying, I'm in here, and no attempt is made, or a very poor attempt is made to go get them. We've kind of put a hit on trying to determine what is viable inside a building when you're looking at it from the outside. People talk about the 360 outside. That's one view, but we got to get the interior view too. So I always believed in interior fire attack. It's what I grew up doing. I make no apologies for that. It is the gold standard of firefighting. We have to put the line inside. We have to take our place in there and make sure that what we're doing protects people and egress and ourselves as well. We get the protection level when we go inside. We get it. And our searchers get it. There's now quite the move and talk about search culture, which is facilitated at some point, maybe not initially, but it is facilitated because of extinguishment culture. At some point, the line is going to go inside, and it's going to also protect those firefighters inside, or some will come in after the line goes inside, whatever people use. But yes, I did want to mention that most certainly. I thought that there was going to be a rapid deterioration of the fire service if we kept going the way we were going. And, that was included in the speech. I talked about my own personal history, covered a lot of different things. And it was well received. However, afterwards, there was some backlash because people didn't like what I had to say. But I also think they didn't quite get what a keynote is. A keynote at FDIC is supposed to be dramatic. They're not all dramatic. I get that. That's fine. But you can do one that's dramatic. And I did. And it was all, if you could go back in time and look at the websites, it was all they talked about for almost a month. I mean, it was ridiculous how crazy it was.
Yeah, I think that it warrants it too. And so now looking back in retrospect, obviously it's 16 years ago, how do you think the culture has shifted? Like, where are we in terms of the public trust? I
think we'll be better off in another 10 years. We're not bad now, but the people who got the speech and are in the fire service today are reaching levels of being in power. And you have to have people that are in power. I mean, I get that we can have leadership at many levels, but the authority to change things really comes at the highest levels of a fire department. And if they have been schooled in this thought to believe in extinguishment culture, then we will see good, positive change. People keep wanting to hold on to things that I guess just make them comfortable. Chief officers are interesting. They want to leave a legacy, which is fine, but they're very cautious about that. And, I just think that at some point, people have to be better educated and stop listening to things that are too old to listen to. In other words, like don't open on smoke. I mean, we can't still be teaching students that. That's dangerous. We have to, nuance it, sure. But to flat out say you don't open on smoke, that's crazy. And it's better to nuance the fact that you do open up on smoke than try and nuance the statement, we don't open up on smoke.
Mm-hmm.
So, I do think we're making strides, great strides. There are conferences every week in this country where firefighters are practicing engine operations. They're getting their nozzlemanship skills. They're improving those. That's important. A lot of that came out of, verbally the speech, also the studies. There's a lot of good things that have supported my speech since then.
So when you kind of touched on that when you talked about these conferences that are going along and people focusing on nozzlemanship and such things, where is the balance between training and safety and being able to get the job done effectively in terms of, the way I think about it is that people that aren't aggressive are because they're not trained to be aggressive, or they're not, they don't have the skill set that allows them to be aggressive. So where do you think all that kind of comes together?
Well, I would say that I wrote many blogs on what I call tactical safety. Tactical safety is basically building in the safety into your skill set. So a nozzle firefighter goes to a house fire. You bleed the line outside the house. that's a safety check. You don't do it inside the house. You can't bring a dry line. You should never bring a dry line to the second floor of a 2-story house and wait for water in the hallway on the second floor. That's a fool's errand. What you need to do, which should be built into your procedures, is you bleed the line outside, you do a functional check of the hand line, you test your stream, you make sure the line looks good, take a look at it, turn around, make sure your partner is there, check your gear. Officer says, okay, we're ready to go in. Now we go in. That's building safety into what we do. We don't need extra layers. We need to just build it into what we do. If you put a ladder to a building and that's your primary way up, you want to put another ladder up so you have a secondary way off the roof. That's building safety into the procedures. The second firefighter on the roof should bring his own ladder. This way we have 2 ways on and off should something unforeseen happen. These are all just very simple things that are built into your standard operating procedures, and we don't need to be giving safety messages all the time about do this, do that, if we build it into the task already. I think that'll take care of a lot of it. The other thing about not being aggressive, unfortunately, is we have a lot of people that are still under the incorrect assumption that aggressive is bad. Aggressive is not bad at all. In fact, I want a group of aggressive firefighters responding to my emergency or fire. I don't want passive people showing up. No good. No good. We want people who are smart, who know their job and know how to perform it correctly and can do it effectively and efficiently. And that's aggressive. If you don't know what you're doing, you're more of a hazard to yourself and everyone else.
Yeah. So the thing that I see is as people get more and more in the weeds, and not in a bad way, but like down the track, I guess it would be a better phrase, in learning about the nuance of, nozzles and hoses and deployments and bundles and whatever the technique is. It feels like these people that are at the forefront of our career field pick each other apart in the nuance, in the I'm smoothbore versus fog, I'm this brand hose versus that brand hose. How do we decide what matters and what doesn't in terms of technique versus product versus it feels like this endless sea of options, and it feels like everyone's on their own hill to die on. And how do we come together in some way that's meaningful?
Yeah, if I knew that answer. Look, firefighting is local. We're not like the police department. My buddy Dennis likes to say that, the police department went from 38s to 9mm because it was a better gun. We do have better things out there, but some people are just stuck in the ways that they've always done things, and that's one aspect. Another is they are afraid to just try new things. That's something else. And the other thing is, everybody has different needs, different budgets, staffing. So we're not going to have one thing for everybody. We're just probably not going to be able to do that in the fire service, and that's fine. But I think what's important is that the fire service, with all the knowledge that's out there, make sure that we are not burying our head in the sand over a lot of stuff. And like you say, dying on a hill for something that, to think that we can't advance technically is just ridiculous. We have many advances, and you know what? A lot of the ideas come from firefighters, and that's wonderful. You look at certain things. New York City has the floor below nozzle and the cockloft nozzle. Those were developed by FDNY firefighters. I mean, as extra tools to help us get into specific spaces. And the other thing that they end up doing is correct water placement. Water placement is like one of the biggest things out there, and a lot of people don't get that. Like, the placement of the water is probably at least 50% of the job. In other words, you got to go in, you got to find the fire, that's fine. but how you apply and your water placement, that's a big deal.
So I think that's a perfect segue to what I can't let you go without talking about, which is your work with Hen, right? So you're at the forefront of nozzles with the turbo. I've been fortunate to have Dennis on and talk to him about it, and I've been fortunate to be able to test the nozzles too, and they're pretty spectacular. Talk to me about how you got involved with that and how that's been going.
It's been going great. One of the things that I love about it is that I found a company that listened to me. And, like any other firefighter or any other person, you want to be listened to. And I was able to convince them that we needed to adapt the turbo into a different type of flow and a different type of nozzle. So the force nozzle is just that. It's a nozzle that operates at 45 psi, but there's more to it than that. So, it has a built-in turbo, which is the back pressure increaser device that Dennis came up with. And that's a wonderful thing. And after, I talk to Dennis all the time. And after we consulted about it, I said, listen, I want to build a nozzle that has 45 psi going forward. And, it ended up still splitting it, a total of 75 psi for the nozzle, but 45 would go forward and 30 would go back towards the hose, which increases the back pressure, which really is like a big, big deal, because now your hose is a bit stiffer. It reduces kinks. It eliminates kinks. It reduces kinks, and it fights for you. In other words, like, you have a much stiffer line, which is what you really want anyway, because now when the backup firefighter is advancing it towards you, it's not kinking and it's resisting kinks. That's a big deal. It also makes it easier for the pump operator to operate the line, because you're adding 25 psi to the nozzle. But you couldn't really operate a smoothbore nozzle at 45 on a hose line. It'll be sloppy. So you need that back pressure. So the force is just such a value proposition for fire departments, because a lot of fire departments have mixed fleet of hose. They have some old, some new, some good, some not so great. So this little device that's now inside the shutoff fixes all that for you. Plus, you're getting 175 gallons a minute, and it's 60 pounds of nozzle reaction. You know why people like 7/8 nozzles? Not for the flow. They don't care about the flow. They care about the nozzle reaction. 60-pound nozzle reaction. So we're at the same thing. We're giving you 15 gallons more, which is always beneficial to have a little bit more. And it works with all the sizes of 1 3/4 inch. It doesn't matter. You got a 188 from New York City. You got a 175 from True ID. It doesn't matter. It's still going to work on all those lines. It's never going to hurt you. That's the best part about it. So the fire service right now is at a bit of a turning point. And, I will say it for nozzles, because this value proposition you can't get around. And, I didn't think I had it in me. I really didn't, to create this product. But because of Dennis's idea, I was able to move forward on my idea. And it's just the culmination of a lot of years. And now what I see is firefighters, when they use this thing, they're awesome with it. And they love it. They really love it. And then when they put the blade on top, it's cherry on top of the sundae. It's awesome, because now you, like I talked about, the coverage you get is awesome. The cooling power is ridiculous. And the contraction of gases. Those are the 3 C's of suppression that you want from any hand line. The other thing it does for fire departments, this is important for chiefs to remember, it's going to make your firefighters better, because the technique, the application technique, is easier and less fatiguing. It's as simple as that. And you can customize the stream. I mean, like, I don't know what more people would want. I really don't.
It's very, as I first discovered it and then had a chance to play with it, It's crazy. It just seems like it checks every box that you could want. It's just a matter of getting it in people's hands and having the right people get over themselves and accept that new isn't always bad, which is hard for some people, I think.
I was at a place and a guy said, he says, "Oh man," he goes, "I like this thing." He goes, "We've had the same nozzles for like 20 something years." He goes, "It's about time we got some new stuff around here."
Yeah, I tell you what, I had a laugh the other day. I follow a antique fire department like page on Facebook, and the other day I saw a pallet of the frontline nozzles we have at my fire department on the antique fire department page, which I thought was pretty funny. I was like, man, we are a little bit behind, maybe. But hey, I will let you go. I really want to tell you, truly from the bottom of my heart, you've given me a career that I love, and without you, I wouldn't have it. So I
appreciate you saying that. I look forward to seeing the podcast, and I will certainly share it to the people that follow me on the different social medias, and I'm happy to do that. And I appreciate the time, bro.
For sure. Thank you so much, Ray. I appreciate it.
Okay.